Hello and welcome to this video on phoenix grafts or Tanuki. These two terms describe the same process of growing a bonsai tree on deadwood, but with very different perspectives. For this video, the name Tanuki will be used. The Tanuki is in essence a sapling grafted to a piece of deadwood, which gives it the appearance of size, age, and structure. Before explaining the process of creating the Tanuki, some background information is needed. The Japanese view this method as a faux pas. The name Tanuki is a nod to that as it means badger. The Japanese consider the badger a tricky, nasty creature. It is a common folklore equivalent of the Western witch. This style has been named Tanuki as it is viewed as a similarly tricky and conniving way to create a bonsai. These can still be stunning trees, and it is done, but they occupy a place below that of an orthodox tree. By contrast, the West views this method as more acceptable, and uses the term phoenix graft to reflect a more optimistic impression. Knowing this, you should anticipate very different receptions for your tree, depending on what your audience consists of. The process of creating your Tanuki follows approximately 9 steps, although the lines between each become blurred. The first step is selecting your deadwood. The wood will rot away over time, but selection of the right kind can provide you with years, decades, or more of service. Choosing a hardwood species is best for this reason. You can also paint the lower part with a preservative or similar to prevent moisture leaching into the timber. Be mindful not to use a toxic product. You want stock with a good place to place the trunk or branches of your tree. Next is your choice of container. There are 2 slightly different schools of thought here. The first is to place your tree and deadwood in a pot that can be used for years. This is necessary when growing from a young sapling into a show tree which can take 5 or more years. The alternative is to start your tree in a suitably large container, such as a bucket, pot, or grow bed, and choose a suitable display pot later on. This involves more work in the long term, but can produce better results. You can now choose a plant. Junipers are the most common species, but others can be used. The primary species chosen are done so because the visible examples of old trees with large quantities of deadwood consist of evergreens. Choose young, pliable plants. You will be twisting, turning, and contorting this tree, so something that can take a bit of rough treatment is important. Assuming you have the standard assortment of tools, wire, and potting supplies, you now have everything required for a Tanuki bonsai. You want to put some drainage holes in the bottom of your container if you are not using a large training pot. You may wish to add wire holes, but this will be optional if you use some of the methods described later. You will now want to take your deadwood and try to decide how it will sit in your pot or what you would like the final product to look like. This may require cutting the base at an angle or adding packing materials such as stones. In most cases, you want the bottom to be completely flat, but for the best laid plans of mice and men, the next stage is fixing the deadwood to your pot. Some sources suggest that you should wire it in, but this is only good if you plan to move it around. 2 more practical solutions are to use a silicone-based adhesive on the base of the wood, glue it to a wide piece of rock or an old plate. Both of these will help with developing better nabari and can be removed later. You then glue this wider piece of stone to the pot, or use it as a weight in the tub or garden bed to keep the wood fixed in place. Another option to this is to use longer screws and washers. By putting a screw up through a wide washer and the bottom of the pot to the wood, you can get a solid fix. Place a thin layer of potting mix in the bottom of your pot in preparation for your tree. Next, choose the front of your tree. In many cases, this is the side that most complements your deadwood, but in some cases you may choose deadwood to complement a particular tree that you are repurposing. This will also help with the next stage of creating your Tanuki. Knowing the directions, twists, and bulges is essential. Having chosen your wood, and hopefully it has some well-placed or stylized recesses and crags that will accept your tree. In many cases, this may not be the case, and you'll need to work on it. This is best done before you affix it to the pot, plate, or stone. Take a Dremel tool, router, chisel and file, or even sandpaper, and create a groove in the deadwood that will accept your tree. Start this groove at the front of the deadwood, so that the base of the live tree is visible. This is considered the proper way to do a Tanuki, but sometimes it is not possible. The groove should be at least half the depth of the tree trunk. In some cases you can get away with less, but more is better. Too shallow and the tree will push out before it is fixed in place. Too deep and it will try to grow branches that will in turn push it out of the groove. Try to make this as deep as possible with sharp sides. An ideal shape will be slightly wider on the inside than it is on the outside. Apply lime sulfur or other preservatives to the area you just worked. Rinse the tree a few days later, and then wait several more days before moving on to the next stage. Plant your tree in the pot at the base of the deadwood and in line with the groove. Wire it down tightly. You may need to remove some of the root ball to make the tree fit in the pot and hard against the deadwood. Begin feeding your tree into the rest of the space you cleared earlier. As you are working the tree into the deadwood, you'll need to secure it in place. Some species cope better with an aggressive method. One of the more common approaches is to take a small drill bit and drill a hole through the tree and into the dead wood. You then take a steel screw and put it through a washer into the tree and into the dead wood. Do not use galvanized screws as they can poison some trees. In fact, some species can be poisoned by steel screws, and it is suggested that brass or copper nails are better. In this case, grafting tape, twine, and a tight initial fit were used for the very thin oak sapling. It also avoids any concerns about the screws or nails damaging the tree. In this case, it will look like an old stump coming back to life, rather than the vein of a live tree running along the wood. You now add the top layer of potting mix and surface dressing. You need to wait, wire, and prune the tree over several years for it to become established. You will want to remove the screws or nails when the tree fits into the groove tightly. These will heal over and should leave almost no scar. To summarize the process, choose your deadwood, choose your initial container, then your tree. Prepare your pot based on the deadwood and tree and affix your deadwood. Choose your tree front, clean and clear the deadwood, begin fixing your tree, add your potting mix, and then there is patience and a lot of it. In about 12 months' time, there will be an update on the process of this particular Tanuki. Thank you for watching this video. If you have found it interesting or useful, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions below.